Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we have the lovely orchestra of the planes flying over, some construction in the background, and some wildlife like hissing squirrels and stuff. So if you can ignore that, I would love to read chapter 4 of Lake City, Stories from a Country Ass Town to you today. So let's begin. Chapter 4, Robert, Abigail, and Rebecca Harrison. Triple H's first son, Edgar, passed from crib death. His second son, Robert, known as Bobby, rose like a star, or someone who hitched his wagon to one. He began his professional life as a school teacher and with his undoubted charm, quickly advanced to principal and the town's recorder, like his daddy. While teaching, he also read the law under his daddy and became an attorney, finally besting his father by becoming a state senator, serving Tennessee for 3 terms. As a former teacher vying for the Senate, Bobby ran on a progressive school platform, among other important issues of the day. He voted for free textbooks, to increase professors' salaries, and for the Teacher Tenure Act. Bobby loved the horse trading of politics. He became the great hero of the family, like a countrified or country fried version of the upcoming Kennedys. His younger brother and his sisters helped Bobby win his campaigns. In his position as attorney, Bobby stepped up to take over the family's holdings, with their complete consent, taking title to almost all his assets in order to best manage them. This was his first folly. When Bobby died in a horrible boating accident on Norris Lake in 1952, the family was thrown into turmoil, both psychological and financial. Bobby fancied the lake and owned one of the first houseboats on Norris, as well as a baby blue speedboat named Windstorm that he docked there. He adored sunbathing, and on every sunny day possible, he'd parade around in his deck shorts, brown as a berry, looking like a movie star with his thick black hair pomaded back and balancing a Cuban cigar in his mouth. As a senator, Bobby often traveled to Havana, where he procured these fine treasures. Okay, to diverge for just 1 second. I love editing because it allows you to do these little divergences. I sent the U.S. government FOIA requests on Bobby, and they literally said they couldn't find anything, or it was archived in a certain place, and I'd have to have just specific things. And it ended up where I would talk to them on the phone about my FOIA requests. And I would give them specific searching terms and all this stuff. And pretty much I got the runaround. So I really, to this day, do not know what in the heck Bobby was doing in Cuba other than being a tourist. Back to our story. On that fateful afternoon in 1952, Bobby, out on a speedboat with his sister Mossy and niece Agatha, was leaving a cove 5 miles above the Norris Dam. A good day was had out on the lake, sunning, swimming, and playing cards. Doing his usual routine, he cranked back the windshield and lay lazily up on the prow, steering the craft with his tanned feet. This was his second folly. The unthinkable occurred. Turning to laugh at something 12-year-old Agatha said, he accidentally kicked the throttle, which stuck wide open, violently throwing them all backward. At the rear of the boat, Agatha and Mossy were tossed unceremoniously into the water. Bobby attempted to reach the steering column as the boat barreled wildly towards the shore. His intent was to quickly gain rein and turn around and retrieve them. He laughed for one split, short-lived second, narrowly missing some swimmers and careering out of control. The power cruiser came half out of the water and crashed onto a large boulder, onto which Bobby was thrown, sustaining head injuries. Mossy, with Agatha in tow, swam a 1/4 mile to shore and then ran frantically to the nearest person for help. Bobby was packed up and rushed via ambulance to Scott Hospital in Lake City, where the doctor on duty flatly denied him care. According to family history and their opinion, the doctor did not, quote, cotton to Bobby. Perhaps the reason for the refusal was that Bobby's injuries were too extensive for the little hospital to handle. With no time for argument, whatever the excuse, the ambulance sped to Fort Sanders Hospital in Knoxville. Upon arrival, the remaining immediate family was summoned by phone and telegram. His eldest sister, Maud, arrived in a swoop and removed Bobby's valuables, rings, gold watch, and car keys. Although x-rays showed no breaks or fractures of the skull, his head injuries proved fatal when his brain swelled. Bobby died 6 hours after arrival from massive intracranial hemorrhage. Young Agatha, holding Bobby's foot as he passed, was in shock. Forgotten by the others, she sat there holding his foot for hours. He was left in the hospital bed for his daughter, Rebecca, who finally arrived from her out-of-town school. She found her father stone-cold dead, and in a fury began demanding things. She insisted on an autopsy, which was refused by the doctor. For the Harrisons, everything went to hell in a handbasket. Like a president, Bobby was buried grandly in a hermetically sealed coffin of solid bronze with a little glass window over his face that, at Becky's insistence, the Harrisons imported from Atlanta at an exorbitant sum. Behind their handkerchiefs, the assembled mourners goggled at the expensive coffin, the likes of which they'd never seen, and the 10 pallbearers it took to hoist it. Maud reckoned 1,000 folk passed his casket. The day he was laid in the ground under a blue tent, there were countless bouquets from family, judges, senators, congressmen, and his girlfriends. The townsfolk had never seen so many flowers and arrangements. After Bobby was interred in Jackson Cemetery, Mossy and Flossie became paranoid about the bronze coffin and worried someone would dig him up for it. They became so vexed about grave robbery, the Harrisons delayed infinitely placing his personal marker, which was silly, as everyone in town knew his burial spot, and it would take a baker's dozen people to remove the coffin. His deceased wife's marker in the Harrison family headstone of Triple H also stood nearby. As of this writing, Bobby still lies unmarked, more than 60 years gone. At Bobby's passing, legally it appeared the Harrison holdings would devolve to his only child, Rebecca, as all the titles for the family assets were in his name alone, and she was his sole heir. Having had enough of the place, Rebecca wanted to leave Lake City for good. Lord knows she had reason to have her refined nose out of joint. The seeds of her unhappiness could have been sown back on the day she was born. As doctors made house calls for births, most children were delivered at home. Her mother, Abigail, went into early labor. She lay in her spool bed as old Dr. Lang was fetched in the wee hours. The country doctor, the only one in town that night, unfortunately, was drunk as a lord. Stinking and reeling, Dr. Lang failed in his basic duties of care. While Rebecca was born alive and healthy, Abigail struggled in bed with fever and began hemorrhaging. The doctor suggested packing Abigail in ice to reduce her temperature. Frantically, the family gathered it from their store and from houses up and down the street, placing the bags right on the mattress around Abigail's burning body. The whole neighborhood, alarmed at having been awakened at an ungodly hour, knew a serious problem was afoot. At one point, after Abigail's fever began cooling and she appeared out of danger, she turned to a half-drunk Bobby. Yes, Bobby was also drunk. In celebration of his firstborn child, he cracked open a hoarded bottle of 4 Roses served neat. Abigail weakly whispered, "Bobby, oh, what time is it?" To which he tartly replied, "What does it matter to you? You aren't going anywhere." Bobby laughed at his joke, but Abigail did not laugh. She drew a last shuddering breath like the rattle of dice in a cup and died, to the shock of everyone in the room. Her eyes, open and vacant, stared into space. Bobby shook her shoulders, refusing to believe she was gone. He fell to his knees at her bedside, then and there committing himself to quit drinking. "I'll never taste another drop, by God," he gutturally exclaimed, crying inconsolably. "On your soul, Abigail, I swear I will not." And he did not. The guilt over that offhand parting comment to his wife, the last she heard on earth, rarely left his mind. The doctor picked up and left town the next day. Fearing for the baby's health and spiritual welfare, Bobby sent for a preacher cousin who baptized her the next day. At the font, she screamed like a banshee, which in retrospect seemed like an ill omen. The baby, raised initially by nannies, was spoiled rotten with praise and material goods. After she was out of diapers, she was sent to one prestigious boarding school after another, while the younger Harrison siblings, Elise and Agatha, were raised in Lake City and Knoxville, respectively. Due to her absences, Becky wasn't particularly close to the rest of the clan, except her father, who doted and fussed whenever he laid eyes upon her. When he was out of town on government business or on a lark, she preferred to spend her vacations with her deceased mother's family, who lived in Kingsport, Tennessee. Perhaps she blamed the death of her mother on her father, the doctor, or the little podunk town in general, and now her father's sudden death was Just too much for her to handle. And the boat accident wasn't Bobby's first close shave on Norris Lake. One summer, Becky invited a school friend for a visit during vacation, and Bobby was pouring gas for a lantern when it flared up and caught his clothing on fire. He wrapped himself in a sheet the girls used for sunbathing and rolled on the shore until the flames snuffed out. Somehow the flames reignited, and so he dove into the lake. He was hospitalized, and Becky begged him to be more careful. Some folks wondered if the lake was cursed. After all, the U.S. government had purchased 152,000 acres of land, upending and relocating nearly 3,000 families from the Norris Reservoir. The cat is so cute right now. She's like scratching between the door. I'm sorry. Some self-sufficient folk were angered at being ousted from their homesteads, and a few farms were displaced twice when Oak Ridge was created. The government also moved almost 6,000 graves, and rumors flew that a few men fell into and were entombed in the concrete when Norris Dam was poured. Some mumbled that maybe, just maybe, it became cursed. So, oh gosh, here I'm going to diverge for a minute again off the script. I just wanted to mention, when I did the historical research on the Norris Reservoir, how sad I found it, reading the accounts of the folks that had family farms for generations that had them taken by the government in like eminent domain to make the Norris Reservoir. So then they go and they take their amount of money and they set up the family farm up where it's now called Oak Ridge, and they get situated. Just about the time they get a toehold in there and they get their farms going again, and here comes the government again to make the secretive town of Oak Ridge, and then they buy your farm again, eminent domain, they take your farm. And it's just, it's sad that some folks, there were some that got relocated twice. And also, when they relocated the bodies from the graveyards, it's not really certain that they got them all. So anyway, maybe I'm just adding to the mystique of the place, but dang, you know, it's like to me, it's like ancient Indian burial ground. That's what it is to me. And yes, I've been on the lake, and yes, I do like the lake, but I can't say that I go on the lake and don't give it a thought when I'm on the lake. So anyway, back to the story. So the other Harrisons, the probate lawsuits they had to initiate were like fingers probing viciously inside a fresh wound. After Becky prevailed in court, she left quickly, taking all the liquid assets, and put the little town behind her. She hadn't darkened the doorway of the White House since. After the dust settled, very little was left for the remaining Harrisons. The White House in Lake City, hotly contested, was divided by the probate court into fourths among the remaining siblings, Maud, Flossie, Mossy, and Harry. A now reduced tract of uncultivated land, only a parcel of the once immense portion originally meant entirely for Harry to farm, was also divided into fourths. Nothing was built on it, and it stood fallow facing the school. The school's land had been sold to it cheaply decades prior, thanks to the generosity of Triple H. The family still owned 2 3-story Victorian houses near the University District in Knoxville, half a general store, and a small, now flagging insurance business that had been Bobby's. Each university house abided approximately 6 boarders at capacity. With all the substantial liquid assets ordered directly to Becky, the Harrisons bought her out of everything they could by mortgaging this and that, leaving them land rich but money poor. Money very poor, by the way. Harry, the youngest of the Harrisons, felt defeated by the deaths of his father and brother. He idolized them both. The weight to carry the family fell on his thin shoulders, and he felt ill-suited for the position. Unlike his father and brother, he wanted to till the soil and did not pursue his doctorate. After Bobby's death, Harry, the most depressed and downcast of the clan, was found in his cups many times by his wife, Margaret. He'd be hiding in the garage, riddled with self-doubt, distraught and mumbling, "It should have been me." Or, "This old family done wore itself out." Whatever their mistakes, follies, or foibles, the family still held deep veneration and undiminished love for Triple H and for Bobby. For Harry, not so much. Between Bobby's probate and the many governmental takings for the expanding city, Elisa's family was left with comparatively little. Comparatively, because they were still better off than most around town and considered wealthy. But from their perspective, it was a sorry situation driven by unhappy changes in circumstance out of their control. Thus, the large extended family lived together in a pile. in the White House, except Mossy and Agatha, who lived in the university boarding house on Clinch Avenue. Although they could have, no one moved into the other boarding house on Highland Avenue. Instead, they stayed wedged, pressed together like the old dusty books in their library. The boarding house rents, a half interest in the general store, and the insurance paychecks were the only sources of income for the large and once wealthy family. And that's the end of chapter 4. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you like this, please push the like button and hit that subscribe bell, and you'll just be notified anytime that I upload a new video. Without further ado, have an excellent day. Bye.